To learn about the off-grid lifestyle and to be inspired to live your dreams, click subscribe so you don't miss anything. Hit the bell notification. So today I thought I would do a little question and answer video. This is Saturday, so I don't usually work too terribly hard on Saturdays. Family members call me. I spend most of the morning talking to family, and then I come out here and mess around. Of course, I still got my daily chores to do. Fill water and take care of the chickens, which has become a bigger chore every day. It's kind of like farming. It's kind of pleasurable. I'm really enjoying it. Wanted to talk to you about rabbits and chickens and different things. Before I get into that though, you'll see though that I have my little tent down there and I'm using that as a chicken run. That has worked out fantastically. My original chicken run, I used PVC pipe, which worked out great. It was fine, but it was hard to cover. Well, with this tent, it's the same size. It's 10 foot by 10 foot. That can hold 10 chickens. And we just wrap chicken wire around it. And it's worked out great. It really has done a great job. So I've ordered a second one so I can put the littler chickens into it, because right now we can't mix chickens together. So you'll see that, hopefully you might be able to see that I got some chickens kind of hiding behind this cardboard box. I've made this temporary chicken run right here. I just wrapped it around 3 trees. And that's worked out pretty good until I get my tent. It's taken forever to get that tent. And then I've got the New Hampshires right here. Sure you can see. There we go. They're all starting to spread out. The New Hampshires aren't being too terribly mean to the younger ones. I guess the New Hampshires are about 8 weeks old, 9 weeks old. You can see there's obviously the yellowish color, orange color ones are much bigger than the Easter eggers. So they're getting along okay, but anytime I put the New Hampshires in with the bigger chickens, which are almost full grown, those bigger chickens just pick on them really bad. So I haven't been able to integrate them. Which brings me to my first question, is why don't I take the chickens and put them in the coop at nighttime? And then when they wake up in the morning, the chickens that I have, the older chickens, won't remember that these chickens weren't there last night. Well, that's just not a true statement. That may be the way to do it if you want to introduce full-grown chickens with full-grown chickens, but there's a pecking order. That's the thing you got to remember. And so size has a lot to do with pecking order. These guys are too small. As soon as the chickens wake up in the morning, if you don't get down there before it lightens up, there's going to be a massacre in there. They will pick these guys to death. So you just can't do that, so we got to keep them separated. Fortunately, this is working out pretty good. I was a little bit worried, sorry about the clothes. I was a little bit worried that these guys would really beat them up, beat the little ones up. But they're not. If the bigger ones are eating and the little ones come around, the bigger ones will peck on them. But they just finished eating. The orange ones here, the New Hampshires, just got done eating. So they're starting to lay down. And now you can start to see the littler ones are coming around, and they're going to start eating. So that's just a pecking order. And that's working out pretty good. So when we get to tent, we can mix these two together. Hopefully, eventually, I'll be able to get these two to sleep together. That's what I'm really wanting to do. And we'll put them in the shed, the camper, which is now our shed, until they're big enough to integrate with the bigger chickens, the oldest chickens. And then we have our 3 or 4 week old chickens over here. And we took them outside today. I sprayed in the house. We had some bugs in the house last night. And so I wanted to get rid of the bugs, so I did some spray. And so I brought these guys outside. It's warm enough where they can be out today. And we're using these little old jars and things as roosts so they can stand up and roost. But these guys are real small, so they'll be inside for a while. It's still too cold at night for them. And then we'll integrate those. Now, one of the things I'm asked very regularly is, why don't we raise rabbits? Carolyn and I have really seriously considered rabbits. We've talked a lot about rabbits, off and on probably for a year. And we're starting to step away from the idea. We've done a lot of research trying to determine which is better, chickens or rabbits, pros and cons. When you weigh it all out, it appears they come about equal. There's some advantages, like rabbits can reproduce faster. Once they have a litter, I guess you call them litter, they can reproduce instantly, whereas a chicken, when they're brooding their eggs, they stop laying eggs until their chickens are of a certain age. The costs are about the same. Rabbits have to stay in a cage, whereas chickens can free roam. And so there's just a lot that we looked at. And in the end, we decided, you know, 6 one way, a half dozen the other. Except, I've raised rabbits before, and I didn't have any luck with it. We bought, I don't know, 5 or 6 rabbits, 1 buck and a few does, I think is what you call them. New Zealand's is what we bought. And we bought them young, so we had to raise them until they were mature age to reproduce. Of course, when the female has their first litter, normally they will eat their first litter just because they don't know what to expect. Well, that happened. Of course, we had like, what, 3 or 4 females, and they all did that. You get into the second litter, and for some reason, I remember, it's been years, that at least one of the rabbits ate her second litter. There was quite a bit of expense involved trying to get to this stage. And I just remember this bad taste in my mouth that I just really didn't like raising rabbits. I've had a lot of luck with chickens. I mean, you might lose a chicken here or there for one reason or another. Typically, some predator will get into them, you know, raccoon, break your defenses, or you'll get a hawk come down and get one somehow or another. But you don't lose a whole flock of chickens, whereas if you've raised this rabbit for several months and she has a litter and she takes them all out. Now, I know there's things you can do, but in the end, I just had a bad taste. So that was one thing that was going against us raising rabbits. Now, you can call me a wussy all you want, but I will have to be honest that butchering rabbits for me is harder emotionally than chickens. I can do it. I have done it. And it sticks with me for a while longer. More importantly, Carolyn is concerned that she would get attached to the rabbit. It would become a pet. She's had a rabbit as a pet. Well, her daughter did. So it's quite possible so it's just easier for us to raise chickens. That's why we decided to go with chickens. The next question I got was, what kind of pressure canner do I have? Before I answer that, I've started making playlists. So like if it says canning, all my videos that I've talked about canning are in that playlist. Chickens is another playlist. Tiny house build, all those videos, what 6 months of videos are in that playlist. So you can go and look at specific areas. Just a few days ago, I went through all the components that we bought, and I have a Presto 16-quart pressure canner. It's much safer than the older kind. There are a lot of people, including Carolyn, who are very scared of the pressure canner and didn't realize that the newer pressure canners were much safer. They got relief valves now. This one has a little rubber gasket thing, a little plug, that if it overpressurizes, that plug pops out, which leads me into the next question. I get a lot of questions, why don't you do freeze-dried? Why don't you do smoker? Canning, I was raised with canning. I know how to do canning. And the thing about a canner is you can buy all the components at a store from a manufacturer who has instructions on how to use it. Tons of information on canning, tons. I mean, absolute tons of information. Everything is purchased with warranties and all that stuff. So when you buy your canner, it comes with an instruction book on how to can chickens and beef. And the other thing is like, if we had leftover beef stew one night and we wanted to preserve it, we could throw it in the canner and we could can it up and we'd have beef stew. And you can anything. It's just incredible, everything you can can. And the reason I like canning is, for example, I started salt curing our pork. Now, I thought it would be a lot easier than it is. And so I bought Morton's Cure Salt and all that. And it does, it cures it for a while. You have to keep it about 50 degrees. And it lasts about 2 weeks to a month. I mean, that's pretty good that you got a piece of meat, you know, sitting around for 2 weeks. That's great. Or even a month. But the problem is if you want to long-term preserve it, I guess you have to really dip it into a canister of salt, and it has to just sit there the entire time. And we just don't have the storage space, kind of like with a smoker. I know you can build a smoker. I've watched a couple videos on it. Now, the first thing when you Google smoking meat, it says it preserves it for 4 days. So then you really think, whoa, 4 days, that's no better than anything else. Well, then if you really dig down into it and you learn how to do it, if you store it properly, so now you got to have a storage facility, and you smoke it properly, and you got to do all these things really properly, kind of like curing the meat, it'll last you a year. Okay, now I'm starting to experiment and do things that I'm not comfortable with. Back to canning, I don't have to experiment with that. There's information out there everywhere. I don't have to build anything. I bought the canner, instructions, put a can in it, can it, done. And that just makes me feel better. That way, I can live self-sustaining right now without an experiment, without tons of money being invested and saying, oh no, that didn't work, I gotta try something else. Another example was freeze drying. I think people get confused when they talk to me about things that I don't have a lot of electric. So I went and Googled freeze drying because I never heard of it before. What I saw was this machine. You can buy the machine, so okay, it's like a canner, it's usable. And you only can get a little bit in the trays. Maybe, I would know, maybe 10 pounds. That's about what the canner can do, I would say. I think the canner can do about 15 pounds. But then you have to run the freeze dryer all night long. So you can't do as much, because in the canner I can do 2 or 3 in a day. So 10 pounds all night long, or 45 pounds all day long. The canner was $2,500. That's a huge investment. I would imagine I spent, maybe with all the cans and the lids and everything, maybe we're up to 500, maybe. I bought a lot of jars, so I'm way off from the $2,500. Plus you got to run that generator all night long. You can't do it off batteries or solar panels. So if you are looking for me to do things, to experiment, I'm not experimenting. I'm just trying to show you how to live off grid, or to live your dreams, like the introduction of my videos say. To learn how to live off grid and to be inspired to live your dreams, click subscribe. Well, yeah, that, you know, with the canner, you know, I showed you. This is how you can live off grid, by preserving meat. And I hope I can inspire you to do something that you like canning. So, I hope I can inspire you to live your dreams. Thanks for watching.